In this video, we'll be looking at some extra examples for 6.2. I want to look at a couple of special cases, and then so we'll look at a few different special cases, and then we'll try to also do an example where we have to identify the missing piece we need to make it side angle side or side side side. So the first example I want to look at is what if two triangles are sharing a side? So say we're given this picture. I have one tick mark showing that these two sides are congruent, and then my other tick mark saying these sides are congruent. Now, how can I make a statement that says these two triangles are congruent? I only have two pairs of congruent sides. Is there a third side that both triangles share that is congruent? Well, there is. It's that side that's going, that diagonal that's going down the middle, right here. This side, since they both share it, it's our third side that's congruent. So I'll just make a mark right here. I'm just going to put 3. I don't need to put the 3 twice because it's already there. Like the side, it's the same side for the upper triangle and the lower triangle. So I'm just going to say this side is congruent to itself, which makes total sense. I mean, we'd have to agree that this side is congruent to this side itself. So what we can say is that these two triangles are congruent by side, side, side. So we're given the purple and the blue, and then this middle piece in pink was not there. Just want to make sure we understood that. This is how the problem was given. And then I have to realize, oh, my third side, my third pair of congruent sides is right here, that shared side. So that's the piece that I need to identify, and then I can be confident that it's side, side, side. Okay. So for my next example is an angle that we can identify. So let's say we're given, example 1, example 2. So let's say we're given this. And we're given this information. This side is congruent to this side, and then this upper side is congruent like that. So my blue is congruent to blue, and my purple, my 2 tick marks, is congruent to my purple, my other 2 tick marks. Now, where is some, like above, where we had the implied third side right here was congruent to itself, there's something we have to reach back in our geometry to realize that without writing it, we can see that there's some congruent pieces here. So what we have is called our vertical angles. So the problem's given like this. This is what's given. And then I have to know, oh yeah, these angles right here, when they're across from each other like that, those angles are congruent to each other. So that's vertical angles. So that's kind of like a reminder we need. Vertical angles. These are my vertical angles. Vertical angles are congruent. So I need to know that. The purple and the blue was given, and then I need to know this pink piece, that vertical angles are congruent. So now I can say, oh, well, these two triangles are congruent. And which theorem are we using? Well, we're going to use side angle side, with my angle in between my two sides. So we will say these two triangles are congruent by side, angle, side, like that. Let's look at a third example. So let's say we're given this and we're given this information. So everything I'm about to write is given. That's congruent to that. Now for this one, we have to say that these are not congruent. We do not have enough information to say these triangles are congruent, because my angle, my location of my angle that is congruent, is not in the proper location. So on this left-hand triangle, I have side, angle, side. The angle's in between the two sides. But over here, I have side, side, angle. This angle does not correspond with this angle, like the location. We would need this congruent angle. These angles are congruent, but we need this one's location to be up top in between the two sides. So we cannot say these are congruent. We just don't have enough information. We're not saying that they're not congruent. We're just saying we don't have enough information to say they are congruent. So we just don't know enough. And that happens. So we would just make this statement. Not enough information, not congruent. So I would prefer if we said not enough information, because they could be congruent, we just can't prove it. So there's an example of a corresponding side where the side is shared by the two triangles. Then we have an example with vertical angles are congruent. Remember, we had to know this about vertical angles. And then we have an example where they are not congruent. So not everything's going to be congruent, or I guess the better wording is not enough information to prove that they're congruent. Okay, so I'm going to do two examples where we have to identify the missing piece to say the triangles are congruent. So let's say we're looking at one like this. And the only information given is this, and we are asked what information do we need to prove side, side, side? That's like our question. What information do we need to prove side, side, side? Let me give these some letters. Well, we already know that AD is congruent to BC. So we can say that. So we'll say given AD is congruent to CB. And what's also given is the fact that BD is congruent to BD. That is a given statement. That is not something we need to be handed to us. It's just implied because it is the same. So it's also given that BD is congruent to BD. So what we actually need is we need that these sides are congruent, and then we'd have all the information. So we need AB to be congruent to CD. And that's kind of like how I'm answering this question. The question asks, what information do we need? Well, we need AB to be congruent to CD to make this statement. Let's do one last example. Okay, so say this is what's given to us. Let's write our question. What info do we need to prove side angle side? Okay, so let's write our given. So this is how the problem would be given to us. We'll say PQ is congruent to ST, and then we'll say SV is congruent to PR. So I'm going to write that as our given. Given PQ is congruent to ST, PQ is congruent to ST, and then we also have given PR is congruent to SV. So what do we need to prove that these triangles are congruent using side angle side? Okay, so we have our two sides, PQST, PRSV, and the angle has to be in between our congruent sides, our pairs of congruent sides. So what angle is in between those pairs of congruent sides? Well, what is needed is for angle QPR, this angle right here, QPR, needs to be congruent to this angle right here, because this is the angle that's in the middle of the two sides. So QPR would be congruent to TSV. Oh, gotta put my angle symbol. Always putting that vertex in the middle. This point right here goes in the middle when we're labeling. This point right here, the S, goes in the middle when we're labeling an angle. And that's how we can identify what is needed given a certain situation. So we are told we need side angle side. We're told our pairs of congruent sides. So we know we need this angle that's in the middle of our pair of congruent sides to prove that these triangles are congruent using side angle side. So that's it for some extra examples. So thank you very much for watching this video, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.